Hello, everyone. Welcome to SPSM. We're looking a little bit different today. Guest hosting for Rudy, but Rudy is definitely holding it down with the tech. Thank you so much, Rudy, for all of your support. So we're here tonight to talk about uh, Black Women Interrupted and how to survive a suicidal world, a world that makes Black women and femmes suicidal, but also how can we survive our suicidal mind? How can we survive a lot of the pain that we experience? And I just want to say a trigger warning. We will be talking about suicidal ideation. We may talk about self-harm, but we will make sure not to talk about the method or anything like that so that it won't be too triggering. I hope that everyone get comfy, get your favorite drink, get on your favorite couch, your favorite seat, because I think this is going to be an absolutely amazing conversation. This is going to be, hopefully, if we do this right, the opposite of many mental health awareness events. In the sense that we're going to be real, we're going to be authentic, we're going to talk about chronic illness, not just, I walked the pain away and I'm fine, but chronic situations. We're going to talk about just Black experiences. So I think it's going to be an amazing, amazing night. Joining with me are two amazing people that I have the honor of sharing the panel with. Toni Wooden, the host of Black and Bipolar podcast, brat, from Columbus, Ohio. The O, how do you do it, Toni? How do you do it?
It's like OHIO. It's like a cult here. It really is. If you yell anywhere OH, somebody's going to yell back IO to you from anywhere. It's very cultish. It is kind of like a cult here when they do that. So it's like you're chanting something.
Okay. All right. We'll put us on from Columbus, Ohio. And also joining with me is Nieisha Deed, the founder of Your PureSpark. Just an amazing mental advocate, speaker. Oh my gosh. And created a provider, a mental health professional provider directory for the Massachusetts area as well.
Yes, we are still working on it. I think that there's a lot of people excited to use the directory, but we are still working on gathering those providers. So if you are a Black provider, a Black wellness provider, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a therapist. These can be Reiki practitioners, yoga teachers, meditation guides, and you're in the Massachusetts area, please go to www.yourpurespark.com and sign up.
Awesome. Yes. And yo, Toni, plug your podcast as well.
So you guys can check out my podcast. It's Black and Bipolar Podcast. You can find it on every major platform that you listen to podcasts on. And it's about my journey about being a Black woman with bipolar and also auditory psychosis. So in a sense, what that is when I hear two distinct voices on both sides of my head. And this is a constant, a constant management in my life, and I am high functioning with it, so which means that I'm able to function in the world without having too much assistance. I am on medication to help control it, but that is the world that I live, and I talk about my experience all on the podcast, so I hope you guys listen.
It's an amazing podcast. You'll learn, you'll laugh, you'll see experiences in yourself in new ways. So check that out as well. And so, yeah, kind of let's get into the questions. The first question is, can you explain your work and how your suicidal experiences, maybe directly or indirectly, inform what you do?
Do you want to go first, Nieisha?
Okay, sure. So a little bit about my work. I always say that it's a little bit complex, right? Because I don't necessarily do the same thing every single day. A part of the work that I do is events like this. I talk to people about my story. I talk to people about what happened to me. And a little bit about it. I don't know if we're going to go into it a little bit later, but in 2017, I had a very severe bout of depression, and I was very suicidal, and then I had the attempts. And once I kind of got the help and went through it and learned some things, right, through therapy, group therapy, and then other forms of healing, I took what I learned from that experience and shared it with people. One, through what I'm doing right now, talking to people, and two, through my platform, PureSpark. And PureSpark, we're really focused on the healing aspect of things, like what you can do to get better. And better might look different for everybody, right? So that's kind of how my experience informed the work that I do.
So, well, some of the work that I do, so I'll go ahead and get in there. But so when I started the podcast, it was during the like kind of the height of the pandemic. During that time, I had a psychotic break. I wasn't on medication. I wasn't taking therapy serious. So when I started getting on medication and I started kind of taking therapy serious, I wanted an outlet because what I was going through with all of these breaks was I felt like I was going through it alone. So I created a podcast as an outlet to help. And I wanted to show that Black women go through some of these major struggles and have to hold them in every day. So I made this podcast so that way I can tell my experience, but also let other Black non men just know that it's okay. It's okay to go through these type of mental illness. You're not alone. Like I was saying earlier, that I want to find my community where I'm not the only one who hears who has auditory psychosis. So you know I wanted to reach out to people.
The
And that's
work
pretty
that you all do is so needed and is just so important. And I am just in awe of the work that you do. For in the work that I do, I'm the founder of Depressed While Black. And a lot of what I do now is inspired by what happened to me after my second suicide attempt when I was hospitalized. It was a huge struggle. I was hospitalized twice due to suicide attempts. And it was hard. It was so difficult in there. I didn't understand why I was misdiagnosed. I didn't understand why they would put me on medication. And the doctor only saw me for about 2.5 minutes. um, I, I was told that I have bipolar because I wrote in a journal and I laughed with my friends, and it was ridiculous. My mom and my best friend at the time was like, "She's a writer," like that. It was just like that's why I write in my journal. So it was just a huge struggle. And also at that time, I wasn't given any black hair care items. Um, I didn't have anything for to cover my hair. It was just a huge struggle. And so a lot of what I do now is to help black folks that are in psychiatric hospitals just get the care and the support that they need. So my nonprofit, we donate black hair care items like satin bonnets, wave caps, hair oil, body butter, just to make folks feel like they're living with dignity in there. Because it's sad, but a lot of these hospitals, they don't provide black hair care products, even sometimes when they're in black neighborhoods. And so it's really difficult to concentrate on group therapy when your lips are chapped or you got dry scalp or your hair is looking a hot mess. And I think, as you all know, how you look and how you present, especially as a black woman, or a black femme or non-binary person in these hospitals, affects how you get treated. So you may have your discharge date moved back because your cornrows look fuzzy because you don't have no cover to put on your hair at night. There's so many different aspects of the mental hospital system that are based basically upon whether you look presentable or not. And so I really wanted to kind of empower patients to feel like they have agency of their bodies and they can present themselves the way that they want to. So yo, this is the work that we do is real, and I just appreciate you all for doing that. Um, yeah.
I
Let's get it
absolutely love
in.
that work that you're doing. That's
I
amazing
love it
because
too.
when I was in the hospital, it was a tough experience because you may not know it, but I had hair before all of this. And it was a lot to deal with. But when I was in the hospital, you're right. Like I had to just do like some really like low budget type of twists and hope that, I got discharged. I was only in there for 72 hours, but what you're doing is really helpful. I mean, even if it is just like moisturizer for your hair or whatnot, it just helps so much. It makes you feel like you're kind of being seen a little bit.
Thank you so much. And hopefully, we're going to be working with Nieisha to do something in the Boston area. We were just putting the energy and we're manifesting that because I know
Trying.
you as well. You know how real it is in Boston hospitals. And man, we just want to help Black folks across the country, wherever they are. We want to let them know that we love them. So, yeah, that's something deep in my heart. But yeah, I want to talk to you about, this topic. Um, it's it's inspired by Girl Interrupted, the film and the book about a white woman who was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which is the condition that I have. And I wanted to kind of talk about the ways in which our society interrupts our healing and our growth beginning as a child. And so, what aspects of society or family interrupted your healing and your growth as a child? And when did you first realize that you were suicidal or dealt with something similar? And how did you kind of restart that journey?
I could start. Um, I was interrupted when I entered into the MECO program. The MECO program is a program here in the Massachusetts area, specifically in the Boston area, that gives inner city students a chance at a quote unquote better education by busing them from the inner city to the suburban towns. I think that, policymakers and administrators had the children's best heart. Like they wanted us to have a better education, right? But they did not think about what that 6 or 7 year old child might feel like when they are lifted up from their neighborhoods where people look like them, where we share the same colors with the people that we live around, an hour out to these towns where you just don't feel connected at all to anyone. You don't look like them. You don't share the same experiences. So right then and there, my self-confidence started to go down. As a child, you're watching movies and you see people that look like you on TV, and you realize that, wait a minute, these people aren't necessarily educated, right? We're not showing pictures of that on TV. So when I go out to school, they're watching the same TV that I'm watching. And I'm intrinsically thinking, okay, well, you don't think that I'm smart. You think that I'm dangerous. You think that I'm that. So I have to prove to you, right? I have to overcompensate in order for you to think that I'm not that. So I always felt so insecure as a child. And then my experience for college was like the total opposite because I went to Howard University. So I was like, I got to be around my people. Um, but, I think that's where things kind of started and it was a little bit shaky for me. And then I relived that when I went into corporate America, right? I had these 4 years where I was immersed in a culture where it was just us. And then I left and then went into corporate America and felt that same way that I felt from first to 12th grade. And then I was severely triggered in 2008, where I had my first attempt. And that's when I got my formal diagnosis of bipolar disorder. And then everything went well until 2017. And then it came back again. And then I realized at that point, all right, Nieisha, there's some things that you got to have to do, right? You got to have to do a lot of self-love, a lot of unlearning, and a lot of healing.
You have a journey there. So I'll go next there. So for me, the part where it goes into, I'm going to start with family. Growing up in a Black family, we were raised Christian for my family, and it was really we weren't really taught about mental health. It was pretty much just a pray about it situation. So when in high school, when I'm around predominantly mostly white people or people who aren't really used to people that are, I don't know, that are a little bit different. So when I did start my hearing my first voice in my uh, left ear, so when I first started hearing that voice, it was really hard to come out to anyone about that, because in society back in high school, it was pretty much that if you were hearing voices, you're looked at as crazy, or you're looked at as, you're not all there or whatnot. So it kind of was very hesitant for I was very hesitant to tell anyone. I told one person, is my best friend to this day, and it was really hard to be able to even open up to her as a 15-year-old. I'm hearing a voice and it's persistent and it's going around the room. It's not just, just in my head. So from that, I started having all of these really depressing feelings and feeling like, I'm not normal, something's not right, to the point where this voice was telling me, I should hurt myself, I'm not worth it. So from there, who do you turn to when your whole family is saying, pray about it, and society is saying that that's not normal? Or, you have all these movies and TV shows that tell you that when people start to talk to themselves or they hear things, you're a little bit crazy. So from there, I kind of went into myself. I just kind of went in there and just didn't come out. I just didn't share that part about me, and I just kept it away. When I did have my first attempt, it was in Kansas City. I opened up a business, and I had been on a manic stage for about 3 to 4 months, and I had not come down at all. So I opened up a business. That's the most logical thing for me to have done during that time, apparently. And I got into debt. I was not successful in that business, and I had a partner that was not helpful at all, very emotionally abusive, and I attempted on myself, which then landed me in the Kansas hospital nearby for 72 hours. And it was the most terrible experience I've ever had in my life. They put me on they just put me on a drug. They didn't really tell me what it was for or what it was going to do, but I just know that it made my depression increase and made the voice very angry. At this time, I was 24 and I had two voices on my shoulder. And then when I moved back to Columbus, I still didn't have anyone that I could actually talk to about it because I hadn't told anyone anything. So from that point, healing was really difficult for me. It's not only in 2020 did I actually start healing myself, because I was tired of the self-destructive behavior that I was demonstrating, going into large amount where I would spend so much money on new partners and I would justify it with I love them, but it really wasn't love. It was just me trying to not be alone because the voices were always there. So in society today, it pretty much hurts when you can't turn to anyone, especially when it's your family. But that's where society and my family kind of pushed me, was to be alone. But that's what I try to help with the Black and Bipolar podcast, is that you don't have to be alone, especially if you know what you're going through. There are safe ways to project those feelings.
Yeah, that's a powerful, powerful story. And I experienced some of that as well. I just kind of wanted to know about um, just kind of the world in which you live in. A lot of times when it comes to mental health, stories around Mental Health Awareness Month is very individualized. Um, People talk about how you need to get help. The onus is on the individual and not necessarily on the community to deliver care. They also talk about, individual stories of suicidality. but they're not interconnected and point to societal conditions that can produce that suicidality. And there was a study that said that if we just increase the minimum wage, there will be less suicide. And so I'm kind of interested, not necessarily from an individualized standpoint, but from a structural standpoint. How does this world, or how can this world make Black women and femmes and Black girls and non-binary folks? How does this world make us suicidal? And also, what can we do about it?
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think that the minimum wage, if it was raised, I think from everyone's point, I think that if the minimum wage was raised, it would definitely help with receiving resources. It is really hard to receive resources here in Columbus, Ohio, because if you don't make a certain amount or you make too less, you're not likely to get Medicaid or any type of pills that you need. Um, for everyone that I have met before, for Black women that I've met that are going through the same kind of struggle that I'm going through, it's pretty much always been they have to work uh, three different jobs just to make the rent, or just to have like different, or just to make their payments on their car. So I really think the minimum wage just keeps us down, and it keeps Black women down into a space where they can't really start their healing process. And that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that obviously increasing the minimum wage, right, would allow us to feel safe, right? If you think of the hierarchy of needs, that's the base, right? The baseline is to feel safe. It's to feel like you have shelter, you have food, you have clothing. That's a basic need. Also, something that's interesting that just recently happened was that, with the pandemic and a lot of people going on unemployment is paying people more than what they were making when they were, in the workforce, right? So right there, we have this large problem where people are like, well, why would I go back to work if I could stay on unemployment and actually have a livable wage? Um, Having a livable wage means that, oh, well, maybe I can actually go to see a therapist to work through some of these childhood traumas that I've experienced, right? Um, it allows you to pay your bills and then have room to do something fun, right? I think that obviously that's definitely one of the most important things. And I think that it's one of the reasons why I went into the field that I went into was because I knew that I would make a livable wage, but then at what cost? I know that, Imadé, that wasn't your question, but I look at the other side of it and say, well, dang, well, what are the sacrifices that we have to make to even make a livable wage, and to live a lifestyle that we would like to live? And that's why I stayed in my profession so long, in dealing with, people that didn't necessarily appreciate me, was because where was I going to go? What was I going to do? I had worked so hard in this profession as a Black woman. Where was I going to go from here? But yes, at the base, we need to be able to survive. We need to be able to put food on our table. We need to be able to have shelter. Those are basic needs.
I think also, just to kind of add in there with the including like the healthcare system when it comes to Black women being pushed suicidal, I think that also anytime I've ever experienced a doctor, a white doctor, it's always been very hard to explain to them that I'm in pain, or to explain that pain to them, especially of like lower class, like to explain that pain and to explain that, I'm hurting, without them looking at me as if, I'm making it up or there's no way. I mean, it takes them until they see my actual chart that I have like this diagnosis. And then that's when they start to sort of believe what I'm saying. So with the mental health care system as well, the biasness of Black women don't really feel pain, or they have to be strong. That still reigns in people's heads so hard that it's frustrating when you're trying to describe your pain to people and they don't take it serious.
Yeah, that's so real. That's actually what happened to me when I was hospitalized the first time. I was telling kind of the head nurse there, who happened to be a Black woman, that this place is making me worse. I was afraid to go to sleep. I was fearful that I would be sexually assaulted because there were patients that flirted with me. There was another patient that was so over medicated that he was walking into people's rooms without knowing where he was. I was just telling, like, throwing us all on one hall. Everyone has different mental health needs, but you're throwing us in group therapy that's not therapeutic. I was telling this nurse, I was like, I am not doing well. This is making me worse. And her response is, well, if you didn't do what you did, you wouldn't be here, and kind of putting the blame on me. And that was making me more suicidal, was the feeling as if it's my fault that I'm in pain, and that I ought to experience more pain as a punishment for the pain I'm already feeling. And in some of these places, they're so punitive. They think that I should be punished for having a mental health condition, that they can escalate your emotions. They can actually make you more suicidal. And then what happened as a result of me getting emotionally dysregulated, and this is at a time when I didn't know I had borderline, I didn't have any skills, I didn't have any diagnosis. I got really upset and really frustrated because I'm coming off the streets protesting. This was around when Eric Garner got killed by the police. And so I went to the door, the door in the psychiatric hospital, and I was like, I'm not leaving. And I was trying to open the door. I don't know why I was doing that. Everything is locked. It's basically a cage, so everything is locked. And then what happened was basically the nurses who, unfortunately, a lot of the low paid workers are Black, and the people who make the most money and actually have power in these psychiatric facilities are typically white or non-Black. And so I had a whole bunch, and this looked terrible, a whole bunch of Black nurses, low paid nurses, that were probably more like me than they were like their bosses, because I would talk to them all the time. They joined together to physically restrain me, um, and they threatened me with drug injection, and they threw me into solitary confinement, aka the isolation room. All of that, all of that made me suicidal. And it kind of speaks to what Toni was saying. They don't see the pain of Black women. They did not see a Black woman in pain. And I think about what could have been the alternatives to that. Well, maybe they wouldn't disappear me an hour upstate like I'm in prison. I was moved up an hour upstate in New York, so that it was harder for my family and friends to visit me and to check in to see what's going on. Maybe it would have looked like me sitting down and having a true mental health screening where we go over all of my different symptoms and see, okay, this is not looking quite like major depressive disorder. This may be borderline. They could have given me education. They could have brought in Black and indigenous healers to support and supplement the medication I was being given. They could have, like what Toni was addressing before, they could have told me what I was on. They forced me to take lithium and Zyprexa in order to get discharged. And patients were giving me more information about the medication than the actual doctor. So the
Yeah.
patient is like, be careful, it can mess up your liver, it can mess up this. This is what happened to me. And we are combining our collective wisdom,
Hmm.
but the doctors weren't telling us anything. And that kind of goes again what Toni was saying. Sometimes they don't even think Black women are smart enough to know what's happening in their bodies or understand the medication they're taking. And so there's so many different ways this we could have been treated. I could have been treated in my home. There's so many different ways that I could have been healed in a psychiatric setting apart from what happened. And so, yeah, I am fired up about stuff like this because this stuff affects me personally. I have a personal vendetta, to be honest. I want this mental health system to love us and to treat us the way that we deserve. So, how can the mental health system, how should it treat suicidal Black women?
With
With
care,
love.
with with respect. Respect would just be the one that should be common, but with respect, for myself, just talking about when I was in the hospital, it was tough because they took away my clothes, they took away my phone, they took away everything that kind of made me me. And they said, "We're going to put you in this room and you need to behave." That's what the nurse actually said to me: "You need to behave." And in that moment, my heart is racing. I never was diagnosed with anxiety until I got older, but I was feeling all the signs of a panic attack. And if they would have just treated me like a human being and just told me what the next steps were, what the process were, the next step was I was in these clothes that weren't mine. And then I was given this pill and no one told me what it's for. They just told me it was going to calm me down, but it didn't calm down the voices. It just made them extremely upset, and it made me to the point where I felt like I deserve this. Like, because of how I am, I deserve this. And when I came out of the hospital, I was so depressed. I did not want to be here anymore. I was angry at myself because the attempt didn't work. And if they would have treated me and saw me and just have had been just respectful, I feel like it would have been a completely different story for myself in that healing process.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, you just want to still be seen as a human. Um, and that's something that I desired so much, is like, hey, I don't feel like myself, but I need you to still treat me like a human being. And I would tell family members like, hey, I might not respond to you, but I need your connection. Like, I need you to just talk to me. I need you to just sit with me. I need you to just be with me. I knew I needed that. And anything outside of that, if I was treated any differently, it would make me feel some kind of way. So being institutionalized and being in a hospital, when you don't feel like you can be your true self, and they only know you for that little short, like, finite time, right? So they saw me doing some things that categorically I probably would have never done, but they think this is who I am, right? Because this is all they see. This is all they know me as. They don't know Nieisha, the accountant. They don't know her, the Howard grad. They don't know her, the friend. They just know her right here in the psych ward. And we just need to give her medication so that it can calm whatever the heck is going on with her down. We don't necessarily really care. I wish I had the list of all the medications that I was on, and they were all for depression. But, I had bipolar disorder, right? So not only was I misdiagnosed, but I was given a cocktail of medications that were actually harmful. And it sounds like you guys were too, right? So it's just, there was just one psychiatrist that asked me a question that no other psychiatrist had asked me. He said, well, what worked for you in the past? And I said, lithium, because back in 2008, that's when I had my initial break. He said, well, we're just going to go ahead and give you lithium. And I started to take the lithium, and then I started to feel better. But as Imadé was alluding to before, the lithium was kind of damaging to, like, my liver. And then I got hypothyroidism. So I had to kind of be weaned off of that at some point. But he took the time to sit there and, like, ask me some questions that no one else ever tried to ask. They were just trying to throw medication at me. And, him just taking that time to ask me that one question started me on a journey toward this healing that I've been on for the past 3 years.
And just shout out to therapists, mental health professionals, wellness practitioners who love Black women and femmes. We see you. Y'all are saving our lives out here. And shout out to my therapist, who is a Black woman who wants to treat folks with borderline personality disorder, which is hard to find. Because if you have BPD on your chart, they can actually deny you service and drop you as a client. Like, it is that real. And so to have a Black therapist who does not call the cops on me when I'm suicidal or when I tell her about it, because she understands the difference between passive ideation and active ideation. She understands what my chronic suicidality looks like. She set up a safety plan. I mean, just shout out to just Black therapists that heal us and that see us as people, because that definitely saved my life. For sure. And that's kind of what Nieisha, what you were talking about, is we need practitioners who honor our right to agency and self-determination. Like, who asks us, how is this medication feeling in your body? Would you like to take this medication? The one psychiatrist said, you can take Effexor or you could take nothing at all. I've never heard that option from any other psychiatrist. And that's what we want. We want self-determination, because even when we are in a crisis, we do know what heals us. We are an expert of our lived experiences. So shout out to that. So yeah, I welcome questions. If anybody in the SPSM fam have any questions, please ask us, put it in the chat, put it in the hashtag SPSM. But I do have one closing question for the panel.
But
go ahead.
I wanted to speak on something that you just said about having agency and about being able to speak up. And I think it kind of goes along with being a Black woman, a Black femme, right? Is that sometimes you think that white doctor, because we're socialized to believe that they know everything, and you're thinking that they're going to work in your best interest. And also, too, when I was like really depressed, I was catatonic, which means I was out of my mind, right? So I'm hoping that I'm looking at this person to be my savior, right? You went to school, you studied, you have all these degrees. What I got to do to get better, And then after a while, I started to learn, right, that, I know myself the best. It took a while for me to get there, but I know myself the best, and I need to speak up when things don't feel right. If I'm on a medication that feels like it's not helping me and it's been 2 weeks or whatever, I need to speak up about that. But I think that that's something that you learn after kind of going through a couple of experiences, or you learn by listening to people that have been through these experiences.
To kind of touch on that, when I was first diagnosed, I know the doctor had told me to not listen to the voices or to ignore them, to actively ignore things that were happening in my ears. And I did take that advice, because I said, well, he has to know what he's talking about, because he's the doctor. He went to school for it, like you were just saying. And when I did that, it just got worse. It just kept getting worse. And then finally, when I did find a therapist that worked for me and worked in a psychotic disorder, it helped a lot more to understand, to not ignore them, but to understand how they operate, and to listen to when your body needs a break, when my body needs a break, when mentally I can't watch TV because it overstimulates them. So it's nice to be able to have someone that you can turn to, and like you were saying, Imadé, just having that safety plan in place, it helps so much.
Yeah, it really does. And just for the folks watching at home, if you have any questions, let me know. Okay, I see a question by Andy B. Brown. What's up? If you had a chance to talk to people that run the state hospitals, what would you want to tell them about your experience?
My experience was really bad with Kansas City. Kansas City is a red state, so I already know that it was going to be a bad experience, no matter if I was in the hospital or not in the hospital. But I think not relearning that. I guess I would say reform, but it's really hard to reform something that has been practiced for years and years. Um, because they already have their racial biasness in there. So it's really hard to say to reform something. So it would be more of training, more trainings, more. I even hesitate to say that because I mean, people can go to trainings all they want, they'll still have their underlying biasness. So I guess just for Kansas City, better clothes in those places because it was itchy. So
I don't know. It's so much. It's literally so much. I was hospitalized in 3 different states: Maryland, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. And I think the underlying feeling that I got when I went into those spaces is like, how am I supposed to heal here? You know, to Imadé's point, you have a lot of people that are dealing with a lot of different situations, right? And you're putting us all in the same area with the hope that we're going to get well, right? But really, it's just so that we can get medicated enough to be pushed back into society. But anybody that I know that's been institutionalized, you don't want to go back there. It's a horrible experience, from the way that you're treated to the ambiance to the food. You're treated less than, whereas if you're in the hospital and you're sick with a broken ankle, oh my goodness, how can we help you? Like, what can we do for you, right? But when you're here in an institution and on a psych ward, you're treated more like a prisoner. Doors locked, you can't get out. You know what I mean? You have, it's just all around just a horrible experience. And I think that what needs to get done is that they partner with different healing organizations. Beam is a great example of that, right? Organizations that kind of know a thing or two about healing. Okay. Look at what they're doing, try to implement some of the things that they're doing, create a space that just, helps to create healing. And I mean, that's from the people to the food, every which way possible.
Yeah, for sure. I hear you. Healing should be built into every aspect of the psychiatric treatment experience. It should be in the clothes. We should have clothes for folks that gets overstimulated and that need to be calmed down. Like, we need clothes that self-soothe you. We need lotions and body butters that self-soothe us. We need cafeteria workers that make amazing food that heals our bodies, because when I was in there, they pathologize everything. They were like, well, Imadé is not eating food. Well, it's trash. That's why I'm not eating the food. It's not that complicated. It's not, I don't have a diagnosis or anything like that because I don't like the food. It's just, it don't taste good. So we need to have food that heals our bodies. There's so many different aspects. And then also, some folks don't want to go to a psychiatric treatment center. They should have the option of being healed at home, and you send practitioners to their houses. So it's so many different things. And then we need to make sure that these places are not so gendered that it can cause like gender dysmorphia, because you may be forced onto a woman's floor but you don't identify as a woman, or maybe you're forced on a man's floor but you don't identify as a man. Like, the psychiatric hospital is so ridiculously gendered for no reason in a lot of ways. And so we have to also be cautious and aware of that. So yes, healing needs to be baked into everything that we do. And we need to include like Black and Indigenous healing practices. Like, these doctors need to learn from us because we invented healing now. Like, we invented this. Like, y'all just learn from us. But we need to kind of also just go back to the roots.
I like what you're saying with not everybody wants to be hospitalized, because I feel like every time I have to do an intake, they ask me, are you are you thinking about attempting? Do you have a plan or whatnot? And I feel very hesitant to answer, because so many times I've answered and people say, well, we should get you in 24-hour, watch or anything like that. And it's like, what you were saying, like there's that passiveness, and then there's like the actual intent to go ahead and do self-harm, where it's, I don't think a lot of people understand that. But if we do open up like more doors and talk about it, I feel like people will start to understand like there is more than one way to heal.
That's powerful. That's powerful. Um, Another question. I want to say Isabel Garcia. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Um, but this is an amazing question. How do we create a culture of community care so that we can depend less on the systems?
I think,
She actually has the answer.
huh?
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying, like, I think like what you were saying, Nieisha, about like Beam, yourself, your organization, you as well, Made, your guys' organization definitely brings awareness to communities that I never knew existed. I mean, without social media, truly, I would not know that there's a lot of things out there that maybe are different states or that can help, like just with telehealth. If it wasn't for this pandemic, I never would have gotten help or seek treatment at all. Um, so in that way, I would like to see the community where I live. It's low income, and I would love to see some type of community action where we do have some type of mental health check-in for the people around me. I mean, it's demoralizing and it's mentally draining, the fact that my neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks and we have to walk in the mud, and it's a predominantly black neighborhood. It is a black neighborhood, so all black neighborhood, and we have to walk in the mud, the rain, just to stand at a bus stop. And when you put in these complaints with the city, they reply with, the money is being allocated to basically the white neighborhoods, the neighborhoods that they want their investors to see. So you see the redlining and you see how much they do not care about black mental health, to the point where they do not give sidewalks over here or benches for the elderly that are over here that need to sit when a bus takes too long. So for me, I would love to see some type of community health, mental health check-in, just like maybe at the community center or anything like that.
Yeah. I think that one of my favorite types of community healing is like peer support. So PureSpark, we do a peer support group every Wednesday night from 7 to 8 o'clock. But it's one of my favorite types of community events because normally they're free. Normally the people that attend are people that have some sort of lived experience. So they can tell you, not from an academic standpoint, but from a lived experience standpoint of like, hey, yeah, I understand. I affirm you. This is what I did. Not to say that you should do the same thing, but this is what worked for me. Like I put this into practice and it worked and I feel XYZ way. I think it's hard though, because a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot of people, but in our society, we're very individualistic in certain sense, in American society.
Mm-hmm.
Culturally, we're not, but in American society, we've kind of been forced to be kind of individuals. And people are on the grind, right? They're trying to buy that, big house, picketed fence, that they're trying to start their families. And it's just about them, 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 them. So it's like, how do you balance the two? How do you maintain a successful career and be a great parent to your child and then also care about your community? Some people don't have that bandwidth, right? Unfortunately, they might work 2 jobs, right? So they're like, community care, what? Like how? Where? um, and then sometimes it could be overwhelming. Like, I live in the hood. And I walk outside, take a right, and there's so many people that are just sitting on the corner. They're drinking, they're asking for money. And as a person, you feel like, dang, well, how much can I actually do? You feel kind of powerless in a sense. So I think that, what's important is that, you do what you can for community care, right? Whether it be joining a peer support group and talking about things that help you, running a peer support group, being there for your family, because your family is your community too, right? But just finding out where you can fit in, and hopefully other services, can help to supplement. Because one of the things that I know for sure is that I might not be able to help you through your childhood traumas. You might have to go seek a professional for that, because I'm trying to work through my own. You know what I mean? So you got to know where you can fit in and then where somebody else needs to come in.
That's so true. And shout out to some amazing organizations. The Okra Project, they help provide free therapy to Black trans folks through the Nina Pop Therapy Fund and the Toni McDade Therapy Fund. So shout out to the Okra Project, OKRA Project. And I think someone reached out to me today, I think, and it was about, let me make sure I shout it out correctly. It was the Vancouver Black Therapy Foundation, and they are collecting donations for free Black therapy up there in Canada. And then the Loveland Foundation, they help provide Black therapy. And I think Sister Afia, I believe, in Chicago, AFYA, they provide free therapy sessions. So we can create the world that we want. Like, we can do that even if it's just our block or just our house, we can already create that future. All we need is mutual aid and collective care, and we can just do it with us, like when Aisha's saying, with our family. And I noticed a change in my mom. My mom definitely was like the religious prayed away. That's how I felt like my healing was interrupted. Was this notion that mental health conditions are a spiritual failure, and so it's just real. It's just real. And so what kind of helped me kind of restart that project was realizing that my mental health condition has nothing to do with any type of spiritual failure. It's just a condition my brain has. And that whatever healing that I want, it's inclusive of spirituality, but it's also inclusive of therapy as well. And, it got to the point where my mom was driving me to my sessions and paying for my sessions, because she realized that she just wants me alive. After a certain point, they stop caring. If you have a real loving parent, they're going to throw prayer away out the window and be like, I just want my child alive. I don't care how they alive. If they on lithium and Cyprex and they gain 50 pounds, my mom was like, well, there go Imadé, gain 50 pounds on Cyprex. So, a true loving parent is going to throw that out the window because they want their child to be safe. And I noticed my mom just radically changed in that way. We can really change our families when we take the lead, when it comes to healing. And when we start to normalize healing, they start healing themselves. So we have power, y'all. Okay. Any comments? Coco? Last question. Okay. Well, this is a really good question. This is from Julia Freeman. What advice would you give your younger self before your attempts? What was the best advice you got during or after your attempts?
I was about to. Well, okay, I'll go ahead and go. One advice that I would give younger Toni is that it's not always going to be so hard. There are going to be tough times that you go through, but it does get better. When I was hearing the first voice at such a young age, at 15, hearing that voice constantly telling me that I'm worthless and I deserve whatever comes my way and can walk around the room and still hear it, I I think I would tell her that it's okay. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to hear it. Um, and then right now, the best advice that I've ever gotten is that my attempts, it wasn't selfish. It was just a time where I didn't feel like myself. So from there, I was able to seek the love and treatment and allowed myself to be loved. I think that was the main advice that I had after my attempt, was that to allow myself to be loved and that it's okay to be loved. And now that I've found that love with a partner and with my family as they started to grow and heal with me, um, it's been the best advice that I just always hear, especially when times get hard.
So my younger self, I think that I thought that I was the only one that experienced what I was experiencing, right? Like that depression. Um, I thought everyone was just living this joyous life, and I was the only one that was miserable, um, and having a difficult time. And obviously, what I learned as I got older and as I shared my story is that this is something that affects so many people. So what I would tell my younger self is, you're not alone. You're not in this alone. You feel so isolated through this process sometimes. Being in a psych ward, or going through your healing journey with a therapist, but knowing that, like, we're all on our own journey and we're going to have ups and downs. That's just a part of life. I think having solace in that would have been helpful for me to kind of know. Gosh, the best advice that I've ever gotten. There's just so much. I follow so many different people on social media, and I just think about one of my favorite people to follow, Alex L. And I can't think of any one of her quotes, but if you're somebody who's kind of going along on your healing journey or your wellness journey, definitely check her out, because she just has so much great wisdom and so much advice to share.
Yeah, I think for me, so I didn't get the borderline personality disorder diagnosis until about 8 years off and on therapy. And I finally got treatment for BPD. It's called dialectical behavioral therapy. I started in January 2020. And one of the first things that the teacher said is that suicide and self harm has to be completely off the table, that like you can't even consider that as an option. And that for some reason, I don't know how, because I deal with chronic suicide ideation most of the times of the week. I have some sort of suicidal thought through my mind, but for some reason it just clicked, and I was like, I have to take this option off the table if I want to live a full life. Because for a lot of us, at least for me, I didn't think I would live past 30. So, I didn't really get a 401k. I didn't really do these kind of long-term things that adults are supposed to do, because I always had suicidality and suicide on the table. And because I kind of took it off, I was able to actually deal with my emotions, because I knew that I couldn't just check out and avoid them. And I'm just now starting to understand the importance of actually leaning towards and experiencing my emotions fully. There's a book called Burnout. And in the book, it says that you need to go, like, it says emotions are tunnels, and that you have to go through the full emotional tunnel in order to complete the cycle. So if we're suppressing our emotions and we're avoiding it through, for me, suicidality, I'll never be able to complete that emotion and get to the other side of it. And so it's been tough for me. People with BPD, we have extreme, intense emotions to the point where it can feel like I'm literally dying, because of what I'm feeling. But what I'm learning is that if I go through that emotion, there's a less likelihood that it's going to actually take over me. But it requires so much faith in my ability to heal, to feel those emotions. So that definitely changed me. And then the one advice that a therapist gave me was that, and this may not be supportive of you. So I feel like if you don't connect with it, throw it out. But it connected with me, was suicidal thoughts can't kill you. Because I deal with suicidal thoughts almost every day, if I freaked out about it and, checked myself into a hospital, I would never be out the hospital. I would always be uh, uh, in treatment and when in the hospital. So I had to learn that just because I have a suicidal thought, that doesn't mean that I'm in crisis. And it also doesn't mean that I'm about to, end my life. Like, it can actually be a thought that I acknowledge. I notice that it's there and I let it pass. And so that's really, helped me. And I think that's we reached the end. I think we had an amazing conversation. Like, oh my gosh. And I just love all this melanin in the room. We looking good, y'all.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you
Appreciate
so
it.
much for inviting me on here. I was very happy to get that email.
Man, it's such an honor to share this panel with you and this event with you. Are there any new projects that you're working on that you would like to plug?
Black and Bipolar podcast. We're just trying to reach out to as many people as possible. Have as many. We're trying. Our goal is to have 10 guests on our podcast before December. We definitely want to reach as many people as possible to let them know that they're not alone. But no major projects besides just hitting our goal and just trying to help people understand they're not alone.
That's awesome. No major projects for PureSpark. This coming Wednesday, we're going to have someone who is an ancient healer come on and speak about some of the work that he's doing. But again, every Wednesday night from 7 to 8, we hold space, we hold a peer support group. And what makes our peer support groups a little bit different than others is that we invite guests on who are healers, to talk a little bit about the work that they do, because we believe in educating people about all the different types of healing modalities, some that they might know of and some that they've never heard of before, just so that people know that there are different ways that they can heal.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna be in the peer support group.
You are.
I didn't forget. I swear. I got everything going together.
Don't worry. I'll remind you.
Well,
What
thank
about you,
you so
Imadé? Do
much.
you have anything coming up?
Oh man, I was about to dip out. I wasn't even going to say
Oh
nothing.
no! We put you on the spot.
I know. Well, I need it. I need it though. I appreciate you. I deal with depression, so sometimes I have a hard time saying positive things about myself. Like, real talk. Like, man, my work evaluation. My boss was like, "What is this? A two? Like, what do you do? What do you do?" I'm like, "I'm sorry, my brain. This is how my brain works."
I'm
But
glad you told
yeah,
me that. I'm glad you told me that, because now I'm gonna be aware of that. Yep.
I know you're gonna hold me accountable. I need it. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much. Thank you. So with Depressed While Black, we also have another program called Help Me Find a Therapist. We help folks find Black therapists. You can go to bit.ly / help me find a therapist form, fill it out, and we'll send up to 3 Black therapist options based upon your criteria. The demand for it is so huge. We helped over 100 people find Black therapists, or at least have Black therapist options. And man, we need support. We need help. So if you would like to volunteer, hit up help me find a therapist program at gmail.com. Again, that's help me find a therapist program at gmail.com. We want to reduce the wait time so that folks can get Black therapist options quicker. We help people across the country, whether you have insurance or you don't have insurance at all. We welcome folks who, experience things that are not just depression and anxiety. I'm looking for somebody that helps me with OCD or ADHD. We see a lot of this stuff. Folks who need help with substance use. We welcome every type of person looking for a Black therapist. And so, yeah, we just need y'all support. We are trying to build capacity. We want to create, and I'm going to put this out there. And shout out to Carlita. Carlita, who is the executive director of Darkness Rising, is our amazing partner for the Help Me Find a Therapist program. Carlita and I, we want to create an automated Help Me Find a Therapist website and app where people can fill in their criteria for a Black therapist and automatically receive options based upon their criteria. We want to have a 0-second wait time because we know that our folks are in crisis. There is, with the pandemic, folks have developed mental health conditions that they did not have before the pandemic. So we want to have that. So we welcome developers, web developers. If you have an idea, you think you may be able to help us with this site, again, help me find a therapist program at gmail.com. Hit us up. So we collectively, we are the collective care. We doing that every day. And I appreciate that. And I love y'all for that as well. So thank you so much for coming tonight. Oh my gosh, you guys are so beautiful, so stunning. Thank you so much for joining me, your lovely spirits. And if you don't have anything else, guess we out. We out.
That's it.
We out.
Thank you.